Welcome to the Conservative Edge. I'm Dr. Joe Coury, your host. This show will give you an edge on the truth. It is about substance on each and every issue. Today's issue is a very complex one. It's called conservatism. And the reason why I say it's a complex one, because conservatives these days are subjected to all kinds of verbal abuse. For example, some people call us reactionary, some people call us the MAGA hat wearers, some people call us KKK or white nationalists or whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to tell you that none of this has to do with conservatism, and our discussion today will produce that conviction, I hope. Now, with us is Dr. Tim Huelskamp. He was named president of the Heartland Institute in July 2017, served as a member of the United States Congress from 2011 to 2017, where he advocated on behalf of conservative free market solution in a wide range of policy areas. He was a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee and the Budget Committee. He opposed Obamacare, and I say hooray for that, fought for food stamp work requirements, reduction of taxes and spending, and lower EPA regulations, and the conscience rights of military chaplains. This was a very controversial issue, and I'm very glad he participated in it. Dr. Huelskamp, I am so honored to have you here on the show. Your institute does fantastic work. And if you'll permit me, I will start with some kind of overview of conservatism as I have indicated to you. So therefore, conservatism refers to historically inherited values, concepts, and principles, rather than abstract ideas and ideals. Conservatism has a strong civic foundation. People came together organically and decided that family is important. It should be the cornerstone of building a society. That government can be intrusive, and therefore government is really the servant of the people as opposed to us serving the government. And it is also, it also has a religious foundation. And I thought I will remind the audience, with your permission, Dr. Huelskamp, of the Declaration of Independence as how we view this country, this magnificent country, as the work of God. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their creators with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think these words are just literally for eternity, and I, as a conservative, believe in them very firmly. The Gettysburg Address, again, brought the role of God in our society, in our mission as a country, that we were highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. I'm sure these words will ring very true in your mind, Doctor. The conservatism favors institutions and practices that have evolved gradually and are manifestation of continuity and stability. We don't want to turn the weight upside down. We have some very strong foundation, civic or religious, and we build on them as we go along, as you have done when you were serving in the United States Congress. Politicians must not try to transform society and politics. Conservatives are not reactionary, committed to outmoded social and political orders. As you know, much better probably than me, the Constitution was amended 27 times. So yes, we are willing to change, but based on very strong principles and for a clear objective purposes. How does that sit with you, Dr. Huelskamp? Do you agree with that, what I just said? What would you like to add?
Certainly an excellent summary of conservative thought here in America today, and I think it can be summed up very well, very shortly in this, that conservatives value the inherent dignity of every individual. And that's what conservative values come down to, that inherent value, that fundamental dignity of each individual. As we visit here today, it is the birthday of my home state of Kansas, birthed in 1861. Kansas was birthed in the middle of the beginning of the Civil War, and the battle was over this. whether the color of your skin determined whether or not you had the dignity as an individual. Of course, my home state of Kansas understood, valued, and followed the abolitionist idea that irrespective of the color of your skin, you were still an individual. You were still determined to be free and have those rights. And so conservatism found its heart and home in Kansas in 1861, and it finds its heart and home in my life and my views today. But again, that's oftentimes what's misunderstood about conservative values, that fundamental understanding of the value of the dignity of an individual, not as a group, not as skin color or your sex. It is about the value of the individual, and that's what our founders understood. That's, if you go throughout human history, the fundamental understanding of that value, whether or not it comes from God, which I believe others might deem it from natural law, separate from deity. But again, that's the fundamental understanding in my mind, and I believe the overwhelming number of conservatives in America today.
I like very much, I agree. By the way, just as a sidekick here, if I may, it says, by their creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Do these three factors apply to the President of the United States? Because all I hear is insults to this man, degradation of all type, trying to block him at every turn. I think he's entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when he locks himself in the White House while Pelosi is in Hawaii enjoying herself, one wonders really whether these people understand the value of the presidency, the value of this president, and that he's entitled to his own form of happiness. This is a side commentary that I thought you will enjoy. In any case, the origin of conservatism, Dr. Yuleskamp, have been rather simple. One could trace it to the French Revolution in 1789. And most of the people who really opposed the French Revolution were called conservative at the time. And their conservatism was due to the fact that they wanted the French Bourbon monarchy to be restored. And a lot of people actually disagreed with them. A lot of people went ahead with the French Revolution. And although it produced incredible results for 10 years, as I'm sure you remember the guillotine and all of that stuff. And so, 3,000-4,000 people were killed via the guillotine, including Louis XVI and his wife. So it kind of was from the first, from its early beginning, it was a resistance to dramatic change where the objectives are not very clear. We are not opposed to change, but the objective has got to be clearer. The first president who mentioned conservatism was John Calhoun, but he was referring to state rights at the time. The biggest spokesman in favor of conservatism was Edmund Burke at the time. He was a parliamentarian in England. And what he said basically, it's great to have a French Revolution, but what they did and the way they transformed everything and the way they toppled and killed and everything else is all, and by the way, Robespierre was killing people in the name of virtue. He said, I'm going to kill this guy because he was not virtuous enough. So in any case, we argued that violent, untraditional, and uprooting of methods that the French Revolution basically did were really corrupted the process of governing. In other words, yes, we want change to come about, but the way the French Revolution did it was not the way, because they're basically trying to destroy everything that was built previous to that. Is there anything you want to add in terms of the origin of conservatism, especially in the U.S.?
Well, I would trace its origin back much earlier in history. Certainly you've identified some of the foundations, but I think perhaps the greatest mind in world philosophy, of course, has been St. Thomas Aquinas, and he's very clear ideas of the dignity of being human, what it meant to live in community, what virtue was, what good is, and I think much of our understanding of conservatism can be traced back to Aquinas. Of course, and Aristotle even going further back, that understanding of the value of the individual, the value of living and what is a common good, and understanding that. So oftentimes if you look at where self-proclaimed conservatives have gone astray, and that's probably straying far from those philosophical ideals, the philosophical arguments, I believe, of St. Thomas Aquinas. Of course, there are those that disagree. But again, if you can't understand the value of the individual and can't understand the value of the individual and how society has been transformed to understand that, again, back to the heart of perhaps the biggest debate in America, the debate over slavery and the compromise in the original Constitution that frankly was not right, and but it took a civil war to work through that. But again, I think it's fundamentally based on that understanding of the value of the individual. And if you look today, you fast forward today and look at the response to conservatism, is still always the same. It's still socialism. It's still the idea that the collective is greater than the individuals, and somehow that great collective, often led by dictators, is going to somehow make our society better off. Looking throughout human history, they've proven their point that socialism, Marxism never works, and conservatism, every time it's tried, it does work, because it recognizes the fundamental value and dignity of the individual, as well as their ultimate goal of working and creating a good in society, oftentimes with government being the problem and certainly not the solution.
Agreed very much. I guess the perfect example would be Venezuela today, and where people literally are begging for food and fleeing the country as fast as they could. 3 million people have left Venezuela. But I really like what President Trump is doing in this regard. And the previous government and our government, the way we dealt with it in the past, really encouraged that thug to really continue in doing what he's doing. No respect for the individual whatsoever, no respect for individual right, no respect for property of the people. The government has money, and that money is not his military. It belongs to everybody in Venezuela. I would like to mention few noted conservatives, and you could add and subtract as you wish. As far as writers, I identified Bill Buckley, Phyllis Schlafly, Friedrich Hayek. Of course, we all know about the great Adam Smith, talking about the value of the free market and the value of the individual in a free market. Peggy Noonan, Thomas Sowell. Among politicians, there are really many. You are one of them. We appreciate your commitment to conservatism. Clearly, President Trump, to me, is a really great conservative. He's done most of the things that you are committed to in Congress, such as lower regulation and lower taxes and so on and so forth. Dick Cheney, Barry Goldwater was probably the most abused in terms of public opinion in the United States. Jean Kirkpatrick, I admired her very much. And then among the new personality, Condoleezza Rice, Ted Cruz, Ben Shapiro is coming very big on the scene, and the kind of people that work and publish in your institute. Any other names you would like to add?
Well, it's hard to talk about the 20th century without recognizing probably the three principal proponents for freedom and conservative thought, and that would be Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II. And together, I believe it was those three and millions of folks fighting inside that brought down the Iron Curtain by arguing, fighting, pushing in public and behind the scenes in ways we probably will never ever know, that literally freed millions from the clutches of Marxism and socialism. And it's hard to imagine how the press mercilessly beat up on all three of those folks, particularly Ronald Reagan here in this country, not recognizing here's the man together with two others that would literally free and bring down that Iron Curtain from Poland all the way across the former Soviet Union. Just a tremendous, and that's the fascinating and frightening thing, that here we are, the wall finally fell down in 1989, roll forward to 2019, you have literally a majority of young folks somehow pining for the glories of Venezuela over the freedom of the fallen Iron Curtain, and just the idea and the misdirection and the misunderstanding of what freedom really means, and what human society is really yearning for. We're not yearning for a dictator. But unfortunately, there are plenty that are promoting socialism as the answer to every evil, when the answer is found within conservative thought, counter to what we hear from Bernie Sanders and his crowd.
Yes, well, Bernie Sanders has a lot to learn, especially the new cohort, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. God help us if these people ever get to control the government.
Well, if you look at their ideas, though, one thing to point out is, particularly on health care, I mean, we talk about, as conservatives, opposition to single-payer health care in America, but for many parts of America, that's all you have. Now that decades and decades of government control, government mandates has essentially wrecked the individual healthcare marketplace. And so, yeah, there are counties in my home state of Kansas, counties across the country where you have one choice. And it's usually a bad choice in terms of healthcare, in terms of your health insurance. And, if we want single payer, we're almost there. And so as conservatives, it is not just about stopping Obamacare. It's rolling back 40 or 50 years of government control of our healthcare system, which is what the Heartland Institute is doing every day. And state after state is fighting for healthcare freedom, fighting for the dignity of the individual to be reflected in our healthcare choices, and not just all other aspects of our life.
Agreed. I wrote a book about Obama. It's called The Ideologue, Obama's Presidency. And I took him to task as far as the Obamacare is concerned. And I proposed a solution that is market-oriented. We have many healthcare systems right now. We have one for the veterans, we have one for the poor, we have one for the retired, and we have one for the rich. And all of them work in such a way that people will feel free to have some choices. What is wrong, I ask, and I will not dwell on that, but what is wrong with making sure that everybody buys insurance and those who cannot afford it will be subsidized by the government? What's wrong with that? What is wrong with having a competition among insurance companies to provide health care for everybody, and whereby each individual will buy his health insurance, and those who cannot afford it, or say below the poverty line or whatever, we will be subsidized by the government? I mean, a simple idea like this, in my opinion, dominates over the nonsense that we hear about taking over Medicare and give it to everybody. If you give it to everybody, nobody is going to have quality health care.
Well, there's certainly no thing as a free lunch, and it's amazing how expensive a free lunch does become. If you look at our healthcare system today, it is so messed up. And so for folks listening, well, what do conservatives think about healthcare in America? Do they think it was great before Obamacare? Absolutely not. It was an absolute disaster. And with most folks, even before Obamacare, we're on some type of government system. I think Milton Friedman probably outlined it the best and proved beyond a doubt that the government healthcare just doesn't work. But from a political perspective, let's not forget from the socialist left, it's not about making it work. It's really about power. It's really about control, because every time the government system fails, it's proof of what? That you need to get rid of the government system? Not according to liberals and socialists. That's the argument for more government.
Exactly.
Conservatives look at it differently. We believe and look at the reality is that bigger government has made the system worse. And we need to replace bigger government with freedom, not more government.
Agreed. Let us look at some of the policy implication of conservatism. What do conservatives want from their government? Well, how about limited government? Why do we believe in limited government? Is it because it's so intrusive, it could really destroy the freedom of the individual and therefore prevent people from living fully their God intended life?
Absolutely. And if you look at that, and that's the fundamental recognition of what is a social good. Yes, we live in a society, but who should make the decisions about them? And one thing that always amazes me about the left, and contrary to conservatives, sometimes conservatives get into this as well, is just somehow the idea that some government, some unknown entity, some person, some elite is going to make a better decision about your life than you are. I think it might have been during a presidential race many, many decades ago. Do you want someone in a far, far off capital making the decisions for your life today? And most people will say no. But there's plenty on the left that say, well, yeah, somebody could make better decisions for everybody else but not me. And that's what's amazing and most interesting and hypocritical about the left, is that they want the elites to make decisions for everybody else but not themselves. They want their own set of rules, which is what you saw in multiple revolutions. You look in Venezuela today, they don't. The dictator there, he doesn't have some elite. He is the elite. At the end of the day, let's just make the decisions ourselves. And we work in state after state to work out what it means to be free, how free enterprise will work in the states and in the federal government. That's what the Heartland Institute does. And again, it's based on the fundamental recognition of the inherent dignity of the individual. But if you talk with a socialist, you talk with a leftist, sometimes they'll say they'll agree with that. And frankly, that's the way they live their lives, making decisions on their own. And it's an ongoing battle. And as Reagan said, our freedom is never far from being lost. It can be lost in every single generation. That's why it's an ongoing battle, not only in American history, but in human history. The battle for freedom is never ending, because our history is full of folks that would like to take advantage of our problems and somehow use that as a lever, an excuse to grab power for themselves. And so conservatism, as in and of itself, it is anti-elite. And that's probably the best description of Donald Trump, is he's anti-elite. And that's why Washington and the media and the lefts is so opposed to Donald Trump, because he is overturned and actually called many Republicans to account. So I thought you were for less big government. And I'll tell you, after 6 years in Washington, there are plenty of Republicans that aren't quite conservatives, and even further left sometimes than the socialists in the past.
Dr. Yulkamp, we'll take a couple of minute break and we'll come back. This is The Conservative Edge. I'm Dr. Joe Coury. Welcome back. This is The Conservative Edge. I'm Dr. Joe Coury. With us is Dr. Tim Yulkamp. It's not easy to pronounce your name. And we are delighted that he's with us. He's the president of the Heartland Institute. They're doing magnificent work in the conservative tradition. I mentioned before we took a break about the wave of conservatism sweeping through Europe and some other countries, I might add. And but it's so different from what we see in the United States. Well, President Trump started the conservative, I call it, revolution in a sense, and he spoke very strongly against illegal immigration. And that wave in Europe started fundamentally against illegal immigration. In all of the countries in Europe, what started many of the conservative parties, so to speak, was immigration. The difference between them and us is we never forget about our roots and about connection to tradition, about connection to the Almighty and all of that stuff. For example, the Italians wanted to limit immigration, right? And Salvini is now one of the most interesting personalities in Europe right now. He's the Minister of Interior in Italy. What he says, okay, I want to limit immigration. That brought him to fame. And then simultaneously he wanted to expand the budget deficit way beyond what was allowed by the European Union. The Swedes wanted to be against immigration, and I will talk about the election results in a minute, but they want to have nothing to do with religion. The Italians, by the way, debated whether the Catholic Church should be involved in their so-called new policies toward immigration. So the idea here, the British, of course, through Brexit, decided to get out of the European Union. Now, this is very important here because the British, not only were they opposed to immigration, but they were to illegal immigration. They have a lot of immigrants living in Britain. 1/3 of London is Muslim, for example. So you cannot say that we don't want Muslim, we don't want this, we don't want that. And many of them come from Asia. As you know, they are Pakistanis or Indians. So the idea here is the British, I think in some respect, and please correct me if you think I'm wrong, felt that their government is becoming more distant from them. They're getting more rules and regulations from the European Parliament, which has 751 people trying to decide how the British should live. And they only have 73 in that parliament, 73 who are British in the European Parliament. And what is happening to their own government? I believe the British at one time were beginning to feel that their government is not as responsive and as caring about their interests and their future. Your comments, please.
My thoughts on Europe in general, is that the question, Doctor?
Yeah, on the movements in Britain that are fundamentally anti-immigrant, not as comprehensive in terms of conservatism as we are.
Well, certainly there are a number of views on this. Probably my personal view is if you're looking at a continuum or a road towards serfdom, Europe is much further down that road than we are here in the United States of America. And I think you're seeing a backlash, whether it's immigration, whether it's issues of energy socialism that we haven't discussed as well. But you tie those two together and look at President Trump's role in raising the issue of immigration in America. And frankly, if you look at most of the European system of immigration, actually makes more sense than we have here in America. Here in America, we have no sense in our immigration system. It doesn't matter whether you have skills or not. The border's open. If you happen to know someone or be related to someone that is already here, that makes no sense whatsoever. And on energy issues, with Donald Trump saying enough with the Paris Accords. I think we see an energy revolution happening definitely in France and definitely in Poland because of Donald Trump standing up and saying enough to the climate alarmists. So I would say it's two issues related: immigration and energy and climate alarmists. And putting those two together, I think Donald Trump has had a major role he has played in the conservative populist movements across Europe in recent years.
Let us look at some of the results in some countries. Clearly, after President Trump was elected in 2016, Brexit in Britain, huge transformation. They're still struggling with it. In Germany, AfD is the party, it's alternative for Deutschland, Germany. They received 12% of the national vote, and they pretty much force Merkel to basically announce her retirement, distant, but retirement nonetheless. The Social Democrats in Sweden, Dr. Juleskamp, 17.6% in the parliament right now. They cannot form a government because none of the other parties want to cooperate with them. So there is conservatism, yes, on one hand to limit immigration, but there is incredible hostility toward them. La Liga, which is a very important party in Italy, and Mr. Salvini is the prime minister. Both of them are very conservative. La Liga got 37% of the popular vote in 2018, 37%, and they have 265 out of 630 seats in the parliament, and 137 Senate seats out of 315 in the Senate. Austria is controlled by conservatives. I lived in Austria for a while when I was a Fulbright scholar, and it's almost unimaginable that the conservative will take control over the country. And you mentioned Poland. Poland and Hungary are very conservative government. So basically, all of that is happening around us, and some people here in the American domain want us to become more socialist and less conservative, so to speak. And your comments, please.
Well, if you roll back maybe 10 years ago, it would be unimaginable to see this type of response. It's the old adage, the center will not hold. And ever increasing leftists, European Union. Great Britain's had enough of it, and numerous parties, as you mentioned, throughout Europe are pushing back. And you didn't mention anything in Poland, but certainly when the Heartland Institute was at the UN Climate Conference, we teamed up with Solidarity, and the historic Solidarity movement took down the Iron Curtain in Poland together with Reagan's help and Thatcher's help and Pope John Paul II's help, and now they're saying, hey, we're telling Germany, leave us alone. We like mining coal. Leave us alone. We liked our energy freedom. We do not want to be dependent on Russia. It's far too often. You look at European history from outside Europe, say how many times can they repeat the mistakes of the past? So what I look at what's happened the last 2 years in particular is it seems to work and mirror what's happening here in the United States of America in reference to response, pushback against the elites who have proven beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond any doubt whatsoever, they can't make it work. They're failing the German people. They're failing the Polish people. They're failing the British. They're failing the every other country over there. It's not working. And but you have a minority of folks, looks like, pushing back, but there are also similarities between the countries in terms of the elitist media misreporting or not covering the news. Over here, the President Trump calls it fake news. Over there, it's there's not many options, and but it's amazing where you could have basically an organic movement like the Yellow Vest, Yellow Jacket movement pop up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden international reporters reporting it. Meanwhile, you've got the state-run media in many of these European countries refusing to report the truth about that. And so there are a lot of similarities between our two continents in terms of the freedom movement, in terms of conservatism, in terms of where we're heading as a society. Will the center hold in America? Will it hold in Europe? We pray and hope so. But we have a lot of rough roads ahead of us as we push back against the elites in both continents.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say, but the point I'm trying to make is that our conservatism has to do with so many policies like the ones you championed when you were in Congress. The European conservatism right now seems to be focused on just one single issue, except for Britain. When we say we are conservatives on so many fronts that we believe are the best interests of this country in the long term as well as in the short term. When we say we want school choice, I don't hear anybody saying that in Europe. When we say we want to limit abortion, the only people who are saying that basically are the Polish in a very big way and the Irish, okay, and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to say is that we have a very tenacious commitment to all of the foundation of conservatism, and we are trying to translate them into policy actions like you have tried yourself. Am I clear on that?
I think so, and we share those frustrations about Europe, and oftentimes visiting with allies throughout Europe, particularly on energy issues and climate issues in which the Heartland Institute remains an international leader. It is hard to find anyone in elective office that actually can carry the tune, actually talk about the value of property rights, about free enterprise. And it seems like the politics have ground that down into Europe, so there's very little discussion on the individual and the rights of property and such. And there seems to be, again, speeding along the path towards serfdom much more quickly in Europe. And of course, then it would translate, the response would become more violent and perhaps more powerful in trying to return to those conservative roots, particularly in France.
It seems that there is no shortage of people who want to unseat Mr. Trump. Some of them want him to resign right now. And about 20 people or so have indicated they want to run against him in 2020. And every single one of them can't find enough words, negative words, insulting words to describe him. Are you optimistic about 2020 just as a...
Well, I think 2020 is shaping up to be a fantastic battle between the left and right. And if you look at the Democrat Party in America today, it is the party of socialism. And Bernie Sanders and and his compadre Alexandria all talk about Democrat socialism as somehow different than socialism. Oh, I think it'll be a great campaign battle between free enterprise and freedom, and socialism and big government. And this debate is overdue here in America, and that's the way it's shaping up. I think every single major candidate for president on the Democrat side has signed on for the Green New Deal, which is socialism, American style, even European style socialism. It is everything the left's always wanted, all in one nice little package called the Green New Deal. And so I'm loving it. They're running on that. This will give an opportunity for Americans to finally make the choice. Do you want big government, or do you want freedom? And I think at the end of the day, I'm confident the American people will choose freedom. And Donald Trump does some fantastic things. He's not always the perfect vessel in my mind for freedom and property rights and those items, but he does have a sense where the American people are at, and they don't like elites telling them what to do. And hopefully that'll be the debate during the 2020 election.
I think it will be, and I think that President Trump will actually win that debate. I think it's almost antithetical to everything we Americans believe in. These people are trying to introduce new concept as if they really discovered the wheel. They have not. These are tired ideas from the past. We are 330 million people in America, and we are as diverse as any country on earth, and we have to have a system that will allow all of us to flourish, and that is the free market system that you believe in and I believe in. I'll let you have the final word. Would you agree with that?
Well, thank you, Doctor, and those are tremendous statements. And whether we're looking forward to 2020 or looking past throughout human history, there is one idea, one ideal that's lifted billions of people out of poverty, and that's the idea of freedom. And the only way you can have freedom is it has to be based on the value, the dignity of every individual human being. And at the end of the day, whether it's in politics or real life, I think almost all humans, they yearn for freedom. And usually what is standing in the way is big government and elites and controlled by evil institutions. And that's what conservative is trying to protect us against is that power that's attacking our individual rights and liberties that I believe come from natural law and or from God. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss freedom, discuss the Heartland Institute, and you can always check us out at heartland.org and take a look at some of the tremendous work we can do in all 50 states, in Washington, D.C., indeed the entire world.
Well, we look forward to helping you. I am very grateful that you decided to join us today. It's been a very interesting discussion. And I sense through the way you talk and through the energy that you project, I sense that all of these commitments are real, and hopefully we'll bring them all to fruition. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This is The Conservative Edge. I'm Dr. Joe Coury.